Hey everyone, and welcome to 121 in Flux. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we talk about movies on this show. First of all, apologies, we didn't have an episode last week. Unforeseen circumstances, and what was actually funny is that we'd actually planned to skip a week this week. So in the end, it didn't actually make that much of a difference to us that we skipped last week, but it meant you get an episode later when you should have had a gap the following week. It doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things. But regardless, we're here now, and we kind of watched two movies worth of a movie because this was almost 3 hours long. We watched Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker, his film from 1979. It's a science fiction, psychological, philosophical drama, and this was one that was on my to watch list. It's been on my to watch list for a long time. Neither of us had ever seen it before.
No, brand new.
Been meaning to watch it for a long time. Part of the reason why I waited so long is because there was a transitional era where I went from SD to HD for most of my viewing. Blu-ray became a thing. Most stuff I watch, I mean, certainly now, like 99.99% of the things I watch are in HD.
Absolutely.
There's very few reasons why I'm watching something in standard def. Typically, it'll be some obscure old horror movie that me and Tim are doing for streams that maybe I'll watch in standard def, or it'll be an old TV show that just it doesn't exist in HD. But for most movies, certainly, and for a long time it was like, well, Criterion are going to do a Blu-ray at some point. They just hadn't get around to it yet because they've done other movies. They've done Solaris, which was also another Tarkovsky film. They were going to get to it, so I was just kind of waiting for that, and then it finally happened this year. And it was like, okay, that's good on the influx list. We're doing that at some point, and that's why we're here today to talk about Stalker. So we'll start spoiler free as we typically do, and I'll give you a warning somewhere in the middle before we go into spoilers. So, what is Stalker?
Good question.
You'd be mistaken for thinking this is a movie about someone who follows like a woman around and like harasses her. It's not that type of stalker. It's a different context.
No, very different.
A unique context. It's not a context which I believe is used in life. Although I could be wrong. Maybe this comes from something. Maybe it comes from something in the Russian language specifically.
Yeah, could do.
Yeah, where it just translates to stalker, which to us means something else, but it actually has two meanings over there. But yeah so it's actually quite interesting because obviously this was made while the Soviet Union was still a thing, so it's kind of interesting to think we're watching a film that was made within the Soviet Union. So it's kind of a weird thing to think about.
And there's definitely some things in there that it touches on the ideologies of that.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think it's also been philosophical about, well, what if we had things differently? And I almost wonder like how cryptic does it have to be to get away with that? Because I feel like the Soviet Union, if they noticed there's like anti-Soviet messages in your movie, they're not going to be too happy about it. So they have
definitely. And I think a big idea of what it's touching is the idea of religion and faith, which again, has these connotations.
So, but yeah, what is Stalker? So Stalker is set in a futuristic sort of alternate world, we'll call it.
Yeah.
In Russia. I actually thought it was post-apocalyptic, and it kind of looks like that at times, but it doesn't.
It's just one area that's post-apocalyptic, I guess.
Yeah, kinda. So basically, in this area, there was what is believed to be a meteorite landed in the past sometime.
20 years ago, I think it was.
Was it 20 years? And basically, the area where it landed became cordoned off by the military. No one's allowed to go in because things are strange in there. Right? They call it the zone. And in the middle of the zone, somewhere, not in the centre necessarily, just somewhere in the zone, there is a room. And this is all sort of rumours and kind of like, hearsay and like, oh, there's a room. And in that room, the zone will grant you your most inner desire.
Yeah.
And a stalker, in the context of this film, is a person who escorts people into the zone to find the room. He's someone.
I think more guides rather than escorts.
Okay, sure, guide. Which involves getting past the military and then sort of navigating through the zone once they're in. Which, as we learn as the movie goes on, is a difficult task because the zone it changes. It changes reality. It warps things and makes things are in different places. It's kind of intentionally confusing.
Bit of a living maze.
In my head, I was almost thinking it's kind of like Blair Witch Project. Like I almost imagine this is what happens in that movie, where the land kind of like shifts and changes when they're not looking, and that's how they always end up in a circle.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you're
I
saying.
don't know. It was just the way I was kind of thinking. Just in the sense that, because it never like has like a CGI. Well, it wouldn't be CGI because it's 79, but it never has like this visual effect moment where it shows you something shifting or like it's always when you're not looking. Like you just things have seemed to have
You
changed over
just come
time.
out of you come out
Yeah,
of somewhere, and it's like, oh, hang on, that's different.
yeah, it's that kind of idea,
Yeah.
uh, and that's the premise of the movie, and I think. And it's very sort of simplistic in its setup of characters. You have your stalker, and you have two characters who want to go into the zone. You have the writer and you have the professor, who do have names, but that's typically how they're referred to, and it's what they're credited as.
Yeah.
So it's this idea again that we have a story that is kind of an allegory for different things because we're not even naming the characters really. We're just kind of going by the stalker, the professor, the writer.
Titles and professions.
Yeah. And I think that's important as well to the themes of the movie as we go through it. So, that's kind of set up. So you've got a science fiction plot. You've got this idea of kind of an adventure almost into this,
I think,
mysterious
yeah,
land.
the plot itself is actually quite simple. It's just that it spends a long time on these big theological ideas within it.
Here's something I love about it. I love the idea that most of it is idea. Like I said, you don't see things changing. You don't see what's going on. You hear characters talk about what the zone is and what could happen if we don't obey the rules and what could happen if we lose our track and lose path and all these things. But you never see any of it. And I think in most movies there'd be a point where that would break my like sort of not suspension of disbelief, but I really appreciate the idea being the movie, right? Like I always appreciate like I love a bottle movie where it's like characters in a room, right, or
Yeah.
a house, and the idea that you build what the world is through the dialogue, and you get this sense of what the entire world is outside of the room. And this is kind of like a weird, different version of that, where it's building all this mythology through just kind of the way the
Talking
characters,
about it, the
yeah,
reactions. You don't actually
but
see any of it.
not just not even just the reactions. I think because there is reactions eventually,
There
but
is, yeah.
I'm thinking more just the way the stalker respects the place and the way he's terrified of what will happen if he doesn't follow what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why I want to bring this up and I want to compliment the film is because there's a point later on where there is kind of this as they're getting closer to maybe they get into the room and there's like a sort of sewer section in the movie. That section is utterly suspenseful in every possible way. I think it's fantastic. And it manages that despite the fact that it's never actually shown me what the danger
Anything, yeah.
is. It's all
You just
theoretical.
it's always you've been told there's a danger. You'll be like, okay, something could happen here. You don't know what. It's just something could
But
happen.
that's the thing. Normally that is bad. Normally in a movie that is bad. If all you've done is told me something could happen, that's not good enough. It doesn't actually give me the
I think
sense.
it's because though normally when they do that, they'll show you some things, but they won't do. But then when they'll just talk around it, it just feels like a problem. Whereas here, because it shows you nothing, it completely leans into its idea, where it's like, no, no, everything's theoretical. We're not going to show you anything really. We're just going to give you just enough that that us telling you is the story.
Yeah, it's all about ideas. It's all about beliefs. You brought up religion and stuff, but even just the idea of because to the stalker, this is his religion. This is
Exactly.
what he
Yeah.
believes thoroughly.
The zone is almost his church.
Yeah, and actually, I'd go even further and say it's not his church, but it's like his pilgrimage.
Yeah.
It's his holy land. Like it's bigger than just a church. It's not like he goes there every week, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Because we learn that he's been to prison already for going in here. Like he's not supposed to do
It is.
this.
It's why well, when I say
Yeah.
it's church, it's almost like he's a priest almost in that sense. He is the spiritual guide. He is one of its spiritual leaders in that sense where it's almost like a home to him where he's comfortable there. So he's not just there once a week, like you say. He's there like
Yeah.
as much as he can.
Yeah, and we see at the start of the movie, like his wife begs him not to go back. Like, no, stay here with me and your child. You've got a daughter. You stay here. You do this. You do that. And he just goes regardless. He has to. And we'll talk in spoilers about his drive and why he has to go in. And I think that's a big part of the movie is kind of analysing his character and why he is this way.
Yeah.
So you got your characters. You go in. I think the opening like 40 minutes or so, which is the sort of the trying to get into the zone, is again really suspenseful. Like all of them sneaking around, like trying to get past guards, and like he's got this whole system where they've got like a truck and they're trying to like hide the truck. It's almost like stealth but with a car. It's like a really
Yeah.
exciting little scene. And it plays out. It's very methodical, and you get the sense that this is his method. This is what he does. This is his plan. And it's beat for beat. It's very slow paced, but in a very intentional way, and it works really well as a result of that. It's also worth mentioning that when we're outside the zone at the start of the movie, everything is sepia toned. It's one color, shades of grey. That's all it is. Not black and white. It's sepia.
It's like the orangey one.
Yeah, the orange. Yeah, if you don't know what sepia means, that's the orangey one. But it's all very desolate, and it feels almost radioactive. Like, kind of going back to the post-apocalyptic feel, as it makes it feel like everything's contaminated almost.
Interesting. Yeah, I was more reading it as industrial. This is the mundane, ordinary life. This is, you say shades of grey. It's all the same. It's all just, this is it.
I actually think that's a more accurate reading on it, because I think what it actually represents in the movie is kind of what you say. It's like, in the zone there's hope. Out here it's desolate.
Yeah. That's
kind of the point. But I think just at the start it felt very post-apocalyptic to me and contaminated.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And maybe you can read it that way, like, it is contaminated. It's contaminated by the lack of imagination, so it's just everything's dull.
Yeah.
But when you get into the zone, it switches to colour.
Yeah. And it looks great.
It does. It's a really nicely shot film. It's 4:3, which, is not my favourite aspect ratio in the world. It's kind of my least favourite, really. It's just a square, and
I think I will. My one criticism when it comes to the aspiration, because I mean, if that's what it is, that's what it is.
Oh sure, yeah, I wouldn't change it.
I think it should have shifted for the zone.
Shifted.
I think the zone should have been a wider. It's just this higher plane of existence almost. To show this wider view, whereas in the town, it's all very narrow-minded.
Yeah, and it's not like, and I know, like, Solaris, which was before this movie, I think that was 72. That was shot in 2.481. So it's not like the director for some reason he chose this for this movie.
It was a choice, not a technical limitation of it. Yeah.
He chose 4:3 for this, so I think that's interesting. And I'm not sure maybe what that says. Is it maybe something as simple as we have 3 characters at all times and they fit into a square better?
Could be.
Because
it's hard to argue with that.
I mean, it's not in a medium shot, admittedly, but if you're doing wide, if you're doing all 3 of them standing, like, tall, then the 4:3 is what you're going to fit them in at all times, almost.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of this movie is.
Yeah. A lot of long shots, a lot of wide stuff. So, that's the whole thing. So, yeah, and a lot of it's them going through. There's a lot of philosophical debating. Some of it, like, it's funny, for 2 hours and 40 minutes, there's honestly only maybe one segment of the movie where I felt the length a little bit, that I felt could have been trimmed down a touch.
Okay.
I think the rest of it actually justifies what it's doing with its minutes.
Yeah. Are you able to say which segment in this?
Yeah, I think so. It's just, there's a segment, once they've had the first sort of chunk of in the zone stuff, they all kind of go to sleep, and there's this weird sort of dreaming section of and it's all philosophical narration going on. I feel like that I could have probably done away with some of that.
Oh no, okay, I'm with you. That felt like it was introducing these extra ideas that weren't necessarily really capitalized on in the same way the other ones were.
I would have maybe done without that. That was the only time where I felt like the time was getting a little. It's like right by in the middle of the movie as well, so it's like, oh, what am I?
It is, yeah.
But
just to point out how you're saying, oh, you don't even feel the first 10 minutes or so is just silent. There's no dialogue at all.
Oh yeah, it's just like the stalker in the bed with his wife, and it's just all. But it's so entrancing. You're like, oh, what's going on? Like, where are we? What is this place? Because it's a different world, and you're like, okay, what is this world? But because you get a bit of text at the start, you get the whole the block of text just saying the meteorite, the zone, the room, and it doesn't actually explain it that well. It gives you the ideas a little bit, and then you have to sort of get it through the dialogue later exactly what people think of this thing and what people actually do.
Usually I'd criticize that. Here I do think it's intentional. It doesn't want to give you a firm idea of what it is, because it wants you to learn through the interpretations of these people.
Oh yeah, this is a movie that is meant to be interpreted. It's not a movie that wants to spell out one specific thing. I think there's multiple ways to interpret what this movie is and what it's about.
Oh yeah, I can think of a few.
Yeah. So even at the end of the movie, when it's all over, I don't think you're meant to it's still meant to be interpreted. And I think the whole point of the movie is the idea of what do you believe as a viewer, but then what do the characters believe, and what do each character represent? And I think, because I think the way you break it down really easy, you have the stalker, who is the religious man who is devout in his beliefs of everything that he knows about this place. You have the writer, who is more cynical, but he's also very fantastical. He writes about all these things. He writes about feelings. He tries to think he's smarter than the religious man, because he gets romantic and he thinks about the ideas of religion, but he's kind of arrogant in doing that. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else because he writes about them. And then you have the professor, who's the cold hard facts man, who only believes what he can see and what he can prove and what he can touch and what he can.
It's very much the religious man, the agnostic, and the atheist.
Yeah, it kind of is actually. Yeah, if you want to boil it down to that, yeah, it kind of is. I always kind of read it more of a time representation.
Yeah.
Whereas you had, like, you know, in the really olden days, you had just the purely religious people, and then you had the scholars coming in, and you had that kind of thing, and then the scientists, the professors, maybe more like, you know, modern science, and actually, you know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
I kind of saw it as that thing, especially if you're looking at the different viewpoints and how they kind of clash with each other and how.
Yeah, that works a lot.
Because at one point, because they kind of break down at one point, and it's like it's the writer who looks back to the religious person and starts blaming him for a lot of things, and starts blaming him for lies and things like that. And it's like, okay, I'm kind of seeing this interpretation coming through it. But I think there's a lot to read into, and we'll go into that.
There is a lot. It's most of what this movie is just, okay, how do these things work because of what they're saying?
Yeah. It is the ultimate movie about. This is the sort of thing. This is the sort of movie that a lot of people will hate.
Oh yeah.
Like, and I say, I think it's a fantastic movie. Like, I'll spoil kind of my overall thoughts. Actually, I never did the thing where I asked you, did you like the movie or not? We always do that.
I think it was kind of clear though at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, we obviously liked it a lot. It's the kind of thing where, forgetting the ending of Lost, I want to compare it to Lost a little bit. There's a because I don't want to talk about how Lost wrapped up. I'm not talking about the ending or anything like that or later seasons. But there was a time in the first early days of Lost, the first couple of seasons, where there was two types of people, right? And now they split again later on because people didn't like where it sort of started giving you hard answers, right? Let's leave that out of this, right? Just the start of the show, where there was people who went, there's an island and there's mysterious things going on, there's a polar bear for some reason, this is stupid, what is it? And then there's other people that went, oh, what does this mean? What are the ideas behind this? This is kind of interesting. The idea that it's bringing up ideas without answering them, at least yet, and giving you like things to ponder, and giving you things to speculate over. The you know, people at home try to like. This is one of the first big shows in my lifetime where people had the I'm sure Twin Peaks did it back in the day for a lot of people, where you had your own kind of murder boards out, and you had the string like connect, not literally, but you were trying to like figure out the plots and how things connected and what were the secrets.
It's water cooler TV.
Essentially, yeah, but more theoretical with like weirder ideas, like philosophical elements, right? And I feel like this movie is that, like, in its purest form.
Extreme, yeah, definitely.
It's just the purest form of, okay, we're not necessarily going to show you anything fantastical, but we're going to talk about it a lot, and we're going to let the characters kind of believe that something might be happening and what's going on, and
yeah, it's do they believe or don't they, and if they don't believe, can it hurt them? Like, it's a fascinating idea, but I think this is one of those movies where you can easily be too young to watch this and just not appreciate it.
Oh yeah, it's not like too young in a sense where it's violence and gore and nudity or anything like that. It's just too young and like, you won't appreciate this until you're at least 18.
Yeah, definitely.
And even then, I think maybe your mid-20s is probably a safer bet.
yeah. Obviously, it varies person to person. But you show this to a 15-year-old. Most of them will be going, what the hell are you making me watch this for? Not all of them, but most.
I think I would have. I don't think I might have enjoyed it as much at 15, but 15 was around the age where I was starting to get into more serious film.
You'd appreciate the technical aspects, what it's doing, but maybe it wouldn't have made you think quite as much as it does now.
Yeah. Whereas watching it now, I feel like I got a lot out of this. I was really. I mean, even before we get to the theories and stuff, like just the adventure of sneaking into the zone right away, I was into that. Like I was so into like this.
Yeah.
Journey into it, and then the whole rail car segment where they're in this little rail car where they're going into the zone, and you have no idea how long it's going to take or how long, and it actually lasts quite long in the movie, but that's when it cuts from the sepia to the colour eventually. But there's a lot of just them on this rail car. It's just all close-ups of their faces, and you never get to see what the surrounding area is. It's very, very specific.
So it's a mystery, isn't it?
And I think that's actually maybe part of the reason why it's 4:3, because if it was wider and you had a close-up of someone, that's part of the wonders of wide, especially the big, wide 2.481, because we've been watching Godless on Netflix over the last couple of weeks, and that's all these big wide cinematic things, big panoramics, And one of the things that you get from those wide shots, because typically, not always, but the rule typically is that your rule of thirds is the same. So the eye line's still in the same place, which means you have more outside of the head at the sides, right? You're not cutting off top and bottom. Most people think you are. It's a really weird stigma, misinformation that's spread about that. You're not cutting anything off top and bottom. You're getting more at the sides, right?
Yeah.
And what that lets you do is it lets you have a close-up of a person, but still get a sense of the surroundings at the same time. You get the personal stuff in here, but you still get stuff at the side to say this is where they are in the room or in the outside or whatever. So maybe the 4x3 here is intentional. Maybe that was one of the reasons why I picked it, is because in this scene you can see nothing of this. It's just the head.
It's why I still think though, once because this is the journey in the mystery. Once they're in and it's open, and we get a few shots where you go, okay, no, there's this vast open place. That's where I feel like I would have benefited a lot from wide.
Do you know that actually might be a technical limitation?
Oh, the change.
The change at the time. I'm thinking because obviously movies recently have done that.
No, you might be right actually. Yeah.
I can't think of anything that's old, and even like 80s old.
No, you could be right. Maybe it is. Yeah.
Like the idea of telling the projectionist, you have to change that like halfway through.
Yeah. No, you could be right.
Yeah, because it wasn't digital. Because now if there's a change like that,
you just do it on their end and that's it.
Yeah, it'll just be like the digital 16:9 will just have black bars at whatever part you need to make the change.
Yeah. That could be it.
So maybe he would have done that if it was an option.
Yeah, maybe he would have. I'd like to think he would have.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I mean, this is your first. I mean, it's only my second Tarkovsky film, but even after one, I think you probably respect him as a filmmaker at the very least. He's a very confident.
Not to, isn't it?
Yeah, very very confident filmmaker.
Yeah.
So just other spoiler-free stuff, I think, before we dive into deep plot and characters. We talked about the visuals. Acting's very good from the three leads. Yeah. It's a very kind of it's an older cast. They're all kind of like middle-aged and older. Like the three men. It's like it's like two guys in their like 40s, and then I think the professor's a bit older.
I think it's intentional. It's the idea that these aren't young people who don't know their thoughts yet. These are people who are long established their feelings. They know how they feel about things. They're a bit more set in their ways because of it.
They're a bit more reflective. In fact, the whole thing with the characters is, especially the writer, is that he's kind of like he's ran out of inspiration. That's what his goal is, to get to the room. Like right from the start, he's like, "Oh, I've ran out of my id. I need my id, like my inspiration." So let's go in there and see if I can get it back. Acting is good. Cinematography is good. Pacing's very good. Outside of maybe that one little segment that I mentioned, the pacing's solid. Like,
out of a 2 hour 40-odd movie, that's maybe a 10-minute chunk.
It doesn't feel too long. It doesn't feel 240 at all. Like I remember, I was curious at one point. I checked the time, thinking.
No, I think after if I had to guess, I'd say maybe hour 45. It feels like roughly. Yeah,
because I remember checking the time at about the 2 hour 10-minute mark and being shocked I was that far into it.
Yeah.
Like thinking I was maybe only about an hour in.
Jesus, yeah.
Or something like that. Like
I know what you mean.
I didn't feel like I was actually in the home stretch yet, and I was. I was like, oh, that's impressive. I didn't feel it that much.
I think that's a point that, just to mention on the actual structure of it. You don't realize you're at the end until you're just there, which is not a criticism, but again, it's this idea of, to go back to the religion. So it's like, oh, they found what they were looking for, or did they? And it's the idea of like, it's this epiphany that just happens. It's not something that you can necessarily build to. It's just a feeling sometimes. Yeah.
I mean, there's a bit of build to it in the sense that the more suspenseful stuff comes right before it, and he sort of implies that we're getting close to the room, but there's not. Yeah, it's very vague. It's very kind of like, oh wait, is this it right here? Oh, okay, we did get here. Okay, right, okay.
Exactly. It's just like, oh, we're here.
Yeah.
So it works though.
No, it does. In this movie, it works. I think that's maybe the most impressive thing about it, is it's breaking a lot of conventional rules, but it's never not working because of it.
It's things that, like, when we're saying them now, we should be saying them as problems, but they're not.
Well, that's the thing. I've said this before, and I'll say it again till the end of time, that there's a lot of filmmaking rules, right? And they're there for a reason, and typically if you break them, you'll mess up. However, almost every single filmmaking rule can be justifiably broken and work, but you have to understand why they're there in the first place to break them.
Yeah, you have to know what you're doing. It's the same for anything like that, though, isn't it? It's like, okay, if you're breaking this, why? What effect is it causing?
Because one of the first rules you learn when you're learning camera work and how to shoot a scene is the line of sight rule, or the 180-degree rule it's sometimes called, which is where think of like a sports game, right? Say you're watching basketball or something like that. You always have the camera on the same side of the court. You never cut to a shot on the other side. All the cameras are all on the same side, because left and right swaps and it's confusing to the viewer. So unless you do like an in-camera move where you actually move in the shot, it's confusing. So you never do it. However, I can think of examples off the top of my head in movies where directors do it, but they do it for effect because they want it to be jarring, or they want it to have a moment or something like that.
Yeah, I can think of a couple as well.
Yeah,
but again, it's for a reason, not just because.
Or to reveal, so like I think the obvious example is the start of X-Men First Class, where young Magneto's talking to the Nazi, and then they're talking for the whole scene, and then it cuts to the reverse shot on the other side, and it's just this room full of blades behind them. But it reveals something, like it reveals something new. But it's the sort of thing where if someone who doesn't know what they're doing is handed a camera and they're doing it constantly without even thinking about it, it'll just look like a mess.
It is, because my favourite example of breaking it is in The Dark Knight.
Go on.
Batman and Joker are talking to each other, and obviously, because it's usually 180, when you cut between them, one will be on the left and one will be on the right. It's almost like they're facing each other.
Yeah.
But there's one point where it cuts and they're on the same side, and it's like, okay, no, they're two sides of the same thing. They're more similar than they realise. It's this idea that the two become one.
Yeah, it's a thematic moment.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I've done it myself. In my final student film, I had a character who was revealed to be kind of crazy, and the moment when she snaps and goes crazy, I crossed the line. The 180-degree line. I crossed it. I also went handheld to imply that she's unstable. But, maybe that's really simple, but it's just, again, even I was sort of like, oh, I'm going to play with this. I'm going to do something with it, because...
Well, that's it, though, isn't it? It's breaking the rules for a reason, and every time this film breaks rules, it's like there's a reason. I just mentioned the one with the narrative structure here. It's the reason is this realization of, oh, I'm here, I'm at the end of my journey. Because in life, you don't know that the end of your journey's coming. It's just like, oh, I'm here. This is this point that I was looking for.
Yeah. Or even just to compare it to death. You don't know when your death's coming. It just comes. That's it.
Exactly.
It's anticlimactic. Life does not obey the rules of a screenplay.
Indeed. Which
is why sometimes a true story turned into a movie can sometimes have an odd structure, because it feels weird compared to other movies. Because
it can feel really conflated because they've had to try and fit into being a movie.
Yeah. But here it's making its points, and it's really smart in a way. So I think we'll go into spoilers, just so we can freely talk about what goes on in the movie. So full spoilers for Stalker. So where to begin in spoiler zone?
It's a good quick. Really?
Hey, I didn't even mean that as a pun. You're the one who paused and made a moment out of it.
Because it sounded intentional.
See, now I want to record a cover of Kenny Loggins'
Danger
Zone, but with Spoiler Zone instead, and we can play it every time we go into spoilers.
Oh, yes. I'm down for that.
Kenny Loggins, what a one-hit wonder. I think he was a wonder. I only know his name because I listened to another podcast years ago that always used to bring him up because they thought it was funny that they brought up Kenny Loggins all the time.
I know him because that Danger Zone is a big part of the TV show Archer. Like it's a major part in it, and it's and they got Kenny Loggins in to do their own cover at one point.
Oh really? Oh
yeah.
You got a bit of work.
Cool.
Yeah, okay, that's cool.
Yeah. and Archer is insistent that he's not a one-hit wonder, and names a bunch of his songs, which you've probably never heard of.
Yeah. So I suppose I'll just sort of describe what so we'll take certain moments actually, and then we'll talk about overall thoughts and theories and interpretations. So when they first get into the zone, right? He starts doing this thing where he's got these like nuts, as in like mechanical nuts.
Yeah, like bolts.
Bolts, yeah, nuts and bolts, yeah, exactly. And he's got like bits of like a scarf or something or a shirt that he's putting through them, and he does this thing where the stalker throws it in a direction because he can't take the straight path, right? He explains this at different times, but that's his explanation later on, is you can't just take the direct path. Which I think the first thing you think of is like, alright, so you can't just take the easy path in life, you have to twist and turn.
And it's this idea, you have to find your own route that works for you.
Yeah. So he's throwing this thing, and if nothing bad happens when it lands, it's like, okay, single file follow that path. One goes first, second person follow his footsteps exactly. And again, even there, if you're talking about civilization, the idea that when someone does something in life, we all start kind of following in their footsteps. Like, I don't know, like one civilization, one country, like, starts, I don't know, building roads. So every country starts building roads, like, in broad scope, kind of thing. So he's doing this, and at one point they go, "Oh, we're going into that building there." He's like, "Okay, let's go," and he's like, "No, we can't just go take the direct path. We have to go around." And all these little things. There is actually a nice little moment here where there is actually some kind of changes that happen, not in like an actual physical way, but just basically when the writer tries to be a smart ass and just says, "Screw this, I'm just walking straight up to it." And he starts kind of freaking out halfway through. It's like a psychological attack almost happens on him. He starts to freak out, and he runs back. The stalker like goes into this little monologue explaining why they can't do this, and it's just this thing. And again, 4x3, it goes straight up, and you can't see anything around him, and it stays on him for the whole time. It's like a proper 5-minute monologue where it's just on him. The others they're listening to him, but they're off camera.
Yeah, we're with them.
Yeah, when it cuts back to them, all of a sudden there's like fog everywhere. It's like the entire like weather's changed between shots.
Yeah, the physics and the reality does not apply to this area of the world. Like, you know, the flowers don't have any scent. They're just there for show.
Yeah. And you can't see the door that they were talking about before. It's just completely obscured by the. And it's still there, but
well, that's the question: is like, is it still there, or has it gone and we just can't see that it's gone?
Exactly. But again, I think we've landed on why it's 4x3. I think this idea that it can hide things at times.
Yeah. I think it must be.
Is probably the reason for it. But so no, they're not totally convinced. They're very skeptical the whole time. They get more skeptical. The harder it gets, they get more skeptical. Like, oh, this is bullshit. You're just, this is some sort of power trip. You're bringing us in here to feel good about yourself and to feel that you're important and things like that. But yeah, so you got all these sections, and kind of showing that maybe this is all bullshit. At one point, like the professor has to go back for his backpack. He has to go back, and the stalker's like, "No, you can't go back. You'll get lost, and like you'll be just gone forever."
You can only go forwards.
And he actually disappears at one point, and they think, "Oh, that's him gone. It's tough. We have to keep going." And then they just run into him eventually.
I think it's interesting because they're progressing in what they believe is forwards.
Yeah,
and you know, they get out of where they are, and he's just there. And then they go, "Oh, how did you get here?" And he just goes, "Yeah, I crawled." It's like, "But how did you overtake us?" And he goes, "I didn't overtake. I just came back."
And maybe you could read that into saying you can't progress forward without science.
Yeah.
You can't give that up and keep going forward. Like, we've got it now, we have to keep it and keep adding.
Alternatively, did he kind of drag them all back by breaking off on his own? Because did they actually get forwards, or were they back where they started because of that?
Yeah, like they have to work together to get forward. They can't just... Yeah. Oh, yeah, I mean, again, multiple interpretations you can look at.
There is. That's why I think there's very few points where sometimes I'll argue things with you. I don't think there's much I can argue in this, because it's like, well, yeah, that could work.
Yeah, there's multiple things. Like the ending alone, I have like 2 or 3 things.
I have a couple myself, yeah.
So, yeah, so they keep going. Like I say, we have that sleeping bit where they all kind of go for a nap. And again, there's some weird things here. Like it's like it never seems to get dark. Like it's like daytime. It never cuts to a shot of them at night. It's just kind of weird. And just things like that. Even the places they choose to sleep are very odd. Like, I think it's the stalker who sleeps on like this. It's like a little bit of rock that's actually in the water. But if he went off either side, it would just be in water. Yeah. He's like isolating this almost little island himself. And I just thought it was a really interesting place to sleep. I don't know what to read into it, but it was.
I mean, if I had to guess, just off the top of my head. It's the same idea as, you know, a castle having a moat. It's this idea of, you know, you cut yourself off as this defensive way. It's this isolation okay, I'm safe here with something around me.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and the other two who represent other parts of society can't get to me. I'm safe here. Okay, I can get to that. But they keep going, and they eventually get into these sewer tunnels. And... okay, this is the most dangerous... We're not supposed to go in here. This is the dangerous place. This is the worst way to get to it. But unfortunately, probably, and he like the Stalker's reason is that they angered the Zone by like doing the other things and like trying to cheat and do other. It's so they're forced into this path, and it's the most dangerous where most people like fail. And they're debating over like who has to go first, and
Yeah, I think it's interesting. This is the only time the Stalker won't go first. Often he'll be the guide and lead forwards, but at this point he says, no, one of you has to go forward and find the path for yourself.
yeah. Well, to be fair, he always makes them walk first,
Yeah.
but he never.
But he always guides them. He always goes, oh, it's that way. Whereas this one is like, no, you have to kind of do the path yourself.
And of course he's deceptive here because they're arguing, because he's like, oh, I don't want to go first. How about one of you go first for change? How about you, Stalker? You brought us here, and he tricks them at the matches. He's like, okay, long match like goes first, and he and we find out later he just had all long matches. He actually deceived them. He's that scared of going first here.
Yeah.
And I think you could maybe argue that's because they're getting close to the room. Is that if this isn't real, he's getting closer to that realization, and that's terrifying.
Yeah, he's so overwhelmed in his belief. He's so confident in it that he's afraid of it being shattered. He's afraid of losing that belief because it's kind of all he has, really. Even though we know he has his family, he still has to come here. This is what he does.
Yeah, not consciously, maybe, but definitely it's there.
Yeah.
It's just, like I say, it's a very great long suspenseful sequence of like throwing the nuts down the subway, the sewer tunnel, and like and what I loved about it as well is from a sound effect point of view, like it's all broken glass and like dirt and rocks, so every single footstep sounded dangerous. It was always this crunch of like rocking glass, and it always just sounded it had that good sound to it.
It did. A real nice crunch.
With a bit of echo as well because of where they are.
Yeah,
the whole thing worked really well. No music during this scene. It was just nothing but the sound of the lonely echo of the pipe, if you will. And so the writer's going forward and like they're kind of following behind them, but they're falling at a great distance. It's like there's a big giant. Like, and maybe if you want to like interpret that, like the idea that the writer will actually think of something far ahead, like let's say a writer's writing about the future, they'll actually predict some things. Like Star Trek didn't get a lot right, but Star Trek they did kind of get mobile phones to an extent because they had the little flippy things.
There's a good handful of things they got right.
Yeah, in the ballpark, and it's the idea that the writer goes out first, even though science is the one who's going to achieve it later. Like the writer goes out and sort of imagines it first. Maybe I don't know if you want to.
No, that works.
But it does eventually get to the other end, and they have to cross through this water that's like neck high, and they have to hold their belongings as they go. Again, get kind of strong religious imagery. I feel here.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of really classic imagery, isn't it? Of struggling through perseverance.
And obviously later on, it gets the most biblical when the writer actually makes like a little sort of crown of thorns that he puts on for a little bit, and it's very mocking. Like he's kind of doing it as a joke more than anything else.
Yeah.
But that's actually one of the posters is just him wearing that crown of thorns.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. It's the one on IMDb that I'm looking at right now.
Very nice.
That I've got for names, which I don't really need because it's Professor Writer Stalker. But
yeah.
So and they get into this great. I think is it like a salt room, like a salt pit room.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's salt, but it's like. It's got this great look to it, just visually, because it's like almost like sand dunes from the desert, but it's in a room.
Yeah,
it's in an industrial rundown room, but it's these perfect sand dunes. So the shots, and again, I think this is actually the cover and the Criterion, if I remember right, is just one of them standing in this room, and it's just these dunes.
I did notice here, you mentioned the word industrial there. This scene is actually a little bit sepia toned. It loses some of the color because obviously part of that's they're inside. It's a bit darker, but it has lost some of the color, and I think that's the idea of no, this is
we're losing the faith a little bit
because this is kind of the old world. This is the remnants of what was here before the meteorite. So this is like this is what was here, whereas compared to outsiders, is like a bit purer.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning the meteorite as well seems to mostly be speculation. Like no one seems to know if that was really what it was.
But it's clear there was a city or town here. There was buildings, but now they're not.
It's actually worth mentioning. There's a few little tidbits that I learned just sort of reading up on the movie afterwards. You know how when they're coming into the zone and they're sneaking past the army, it's like the town around the zone is all desolate and empty. It's actually based on. I can't remember the planet. It wasn't Chernobyl, but there was another one that happened. That was
Chernobyl hadn't happened yet.
Yeah, it was like the I don't know. I think even today it's like the third biggest, like the biggest one being Japan from a few years ago,
Yeah.
or 6 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever that was now. But yeah, that's the second one. Chernobyl's the first, obviously, because it's Chernobyl. Everyone remembers that for a reason. But the third one was also in Russia, and when it happened, the Russians, the Soviet, military or whatever, never told people that's what happened. But one of the things they did do, it's like it was all mysterious. It was all idea we don't know what's beyond defence. But they cordoned an area off, and then the town around that area was evacuated. So this was actually kind of echoing real life things that were happening.
I think it is interesting as well that the nuclear parallels are also here. We haven't mentioned that yet.
Yeah.
But the idea of the zone being a nuclear zone, all the reality has changed. Physics doesn't work. Things are just kind of mutated and just not right.
Radiation from this is kind of a thing as well to talk about. But yeah, it's kind of this idea. It's almost like if you want to go down that path, like let's say it was like the meteorite was basically a nuclear bomb essentially hitting this place.
Yeah.
Like, do you then think, okay, is this the idea that like death always leads to new ideas and creation? So people have taken the idea, like if they didn't know that's what happened and they just tried to like theorize about it, like do they turn it into a symbol in and of itself? And I don't know where I'm going with this. But,
no, I get what you're saying. I mean, to bring in another source, it's similar to the Fallout games where they kind of worship nuclear power, even though they're like that is a post-apocalyptic, bombs went off.
Yeah, that's why the world's a shit. Yeah.
yeah. But there's a subsect that worships the nuclear bomb. It's like no, something with that amount of power that can do that changes the world. And it's kind of, you can kind of take that here. It's like, okay, if this is like a nuclear sort of analogy, it's the idea that we should be afraid of it, but we can use it.
It's just funny because we're also watching Dark on Netflix right now, and nuclear power plants are a thing in that. So it's just funny to be talking about this in the.
It is.
Especially when it's like this important to the time period, specifically. But I think that's very interesting. It was 'cause I didn't know when I watched the movie that this had happened where they'd evacuated a town around a nuclear plant that had went,
I didn't know that either, but I was feeling the nuclear vibes.
Yeah. But now that I know that and I think about those scenes in the movie of them sneaking in and the army kind of like not wanting anyone to know what's beyond defence, like I'm just like, okay, I can see how that's actually...
Yeah, it's a bit clearer.
Yeah, it's a nice little touch. It works really well. It reminds me a lot of how Godzilla was like an allegory for the nuclear bomb as well, with, with the giant monster.
Yeah, but this is more nuclear power rather than a nuclear bomb.
Oh, sure, yeah. But obviously it's the first thing you think of when you think nuclear allegory.
It definitely is, yeah.
Godzilla's the first thing that pops into your head. So... But no, so they go through the sewer tunnels, they're in this salt mine. And this is actually when the writer has this model. He gets up to this like well that's in the middle of the room. And the others are kind of like far back in the salt still. And he starts like talking about kind of his like ideas and the idea of like... Because he even like talks about some stuff where you think like it almost sounds like time travel talking away, but he's not really saying that. He's talking about the future and he's talking about the past and the present. But he's kind of talking about how you don't really know, like you don't realise you're in the future, or you don't realise that you've already passed the present kind of thing. Like he's sort of like he's going down that path of that line of thinking.
It's I can't remember what this is a quote from actually, but it's you never realise that you're in the good old days until after you've gone through them.
That's a quote from The Office.
Is that what it's from?
Yeah, it's Andy from the finale of The Office.
But it applies here, is the point.
Okay.
I always see it on Facebook in various memes. But the point is, it's that idea of you don't necessarily realise what period of your life you're in until you look back. And, we talked already about how they're already reflective at this stage in their lives. And it's just tying into that here again, I think.
I've just clicked on the quotes page. On the IMDb just to see if I can get this monologue. I want to actually kind of analyse it. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be there. There's a couple of writer bits. Maybe part of one of these is actually from that. I'll read some of these because some of them are actually like they're kind of. The thing is, when you're pulling a quote, because sometimes the quotes in IMDb are just like funny lines or whatever, but here it's like no, they're all going to mean something because that's kind of what's worth pulling from it. Here's an interesting one. My conscience wants vegetarianism. It's really weird to say that whole word. To win over the world, and my subconscious is yearning for a piece of juicy meat. But what do I want? That right there.
I like that. It's this idea of we want better for society, because that's what we should want.
Yeah.
But at the same time, a lot of us are inherently selfish. We want things that we want as well, even though that's not for the good of everyone.
Yeah. Oh, actually, actually one of the lines I wanted to talk about from this monologue. So this is the writer during this movie. He says, "A man writes because he is tormented because he doubts. He needs to constantly prove himself and the others that he's worth something. And if I know for sure that I am a genius, then why write? What the hell for? He's got nothing to prove anymore. The drive to prove is what actually inspires him to keep doing his thing. Is basically the idea. Yeah. So it's actually going to one of the big themes of the movie." Is the idea of wanting something, like the idea, like all these men want something, they all go here because, and I think there's a lot to talk about the Stalker as well in this sense, but I think what the writer obviously hits the nail on the head here. This is the point in the movie where he said this, and I actually started thinking about that, the idea of just, the whole idea of wanting to go to this room for your inner desire to achieve something you want, but the idea of that, once you actually get it, does that actually like completely change your life? Like, kind of like how we talked about how the Stalker was scared of proving himself wrong. That if he gets to the room, because before this he says that the Stalker never walks in the room.
Yeah, he tells us about his
mentor,
previous stalker,
the stalker who taught him how to stalk in this context, and how he got all this money after it in the room, but within like a week he hung himself.
Yeah,
and it messed with him, and it's almost like this is a self-built-in like boogeyman story to stop the Stalker from ever finding out that it's bullshit, to never go in the room.
Yeah,
assuming it's fake, of course. Like it may be real.
Assuming it's fake, yeah, it could be real. That I think it's the idea of you can't do. It kind of ties in with that vegetarianism one we just mentioned as well. It's like it's do you really know what you want? You say you want to you want the things for the good of society, but you want meat for yourself, and it's this danger of, do you really want to be confronted with the reality of things, or is the illusion better?
Yeah, even if the Stalker goes in and finds out that everything he thought was real. Like
it's no longer a belief. It's no longer a faith for him. He loses that aspect of himself where he is confident in what he's doing is right because he believes it. Now it's just another thing that he knows.
Exactly. It's the desire to drive you forward is more important than actually getting what you desire.
Yes.
When it comes to these sort of bigger ideas, we're not talking about I want a piece of cake. Oh, I've got a piece of cake. My desire.
It's always better.
Yeah, no, you're happy you got a piece of cake. You desire it because you're hungry. But so you have that idea. I thought that monologue was a fantastic. I think that was for me. I was enjoying like the atmosphere, because that's the other thing. Like the atmosphere it's just drenched in atmosphere the entire time. Like you feel the world around you. But I think this was the point in the movie where the philosophical and the debate and the ideology was really starting to click for me, and I was really starting to get, okay, this is what this movie's really about. And when it got to the next section of the movie where they're kind of like, they're past this point and they're just kind of hanging around, and there's bizarrely a phone there that starts ringing, and then the professor phones someone he knows, and he's like, oh yeah, you told me it was all a lie. Because that's the thing, the professor's really here to prove that it exists. He's here to like prove that this room exists. And if it does exist, we find out this is why he wanted to get his backpack so much. He's brought a bomb to destroy it, because if this room is as powerful as it's as the stories say it is, if it can actually grant anyone anything, then what if the next Hitler walks in that room?
Yeah,
like he has to take it away, and that's where I think the nuclear power, or nuclear bomb even more specifically, analogy comes into play. It's this idea that a scientist will want to experiment and create something. But it's this fear that, okay, so men created the nuclear bomb, look at the bad things that have happened because of it.
Yeah, it's the idea that all scientific advancements can be weaponized.
Yeah.
But should that mean that we're afraid of moving forward?
Exactly, yeah.
It's that dilemma that a lot of scientists are, the moral dilemma of, I want to create this for the betterment of mankind, and I believe I'm advancing the world, but what if it gets misused?
Exactly. Like, you make a laser that can cure wounds, but it can also be used to cut heads off. Like, does a military somewhere start to use it? Like, that's a really silly example, but you know what I mean? Like, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Nuclear power, potentially, obviously we're kind of outliving it now, and we're getting to better resources now. We're switching to solar and wind.
It's still a solid resource. The problem is the disposal, or lack thereof.
But for a long time, it was a more efficient way in some regards to get power. It was a better way for some time. But the downside was is also, the bomb came from it as well, all that kind of thing. So, and obviously disasters like Chernobyl and everything else. So
Yeah, it did great things. It sort of provided power, but too much power is dangerous.
yes. And the whole sort of last chunk of the movie in the zone where they're because at one point he literally just says the word, okay, that's it. That's the room. There's not even a door. It's just a big, which you don't actually realize at first, because again, the camera work obscures the door, or what I thought was going to be a door, for the entire scene until the end, when you cut it to inside the room, sort of looking out at them, and you realize it's just a big sort of
Open archway.
It's like a truck. Almost. You could drive a truck through it. It's that
Yeah.
big. And but the whole scene before that point, it's like, shot from the side, and you can never quite see the door. You see them looking towards it as if there is a door there, and it's like, oh, this is it. Maybe we should go in. Maybe you should go in. And it devolves into a fight, and they're fighting over, and it becomes this thing where the three representatives of all these different parts of society all start debating over what it should be. The religious man, the stalker, wants to protect it and says, no, you can't blow that up. Like, this is like blasphemy. You can't do this. But the writer kind of comes around to the professor's way of thinking, or at the very least, he wants to fight the religious man. He's like, no.
He, again, to go back to the writer being agnostic, he's kind of open to both sides. He's like, I can be convinced either way.
Yeah, but he's willing to not take either thing at complete face value, which is why he has to fight with the stalker. He's like, no, like, we're not just going to believe every word you say. We can't just take everything for granted. And ultimately, even the stalker can't go in. It's like, that moment when they've all just said, none of them are going in. Like, they've all basically said we're staying away. And it goes to that gorgeous shot inside the room that just sort of keeps pulling back, and you just see some water dripping. Like, there's nothing special about this room. It's just another industrial-looking space.
Yeah.
It's just a big empty room where there's some water dripping. But they put so much meaning into it that it means something. Really, okay, this is the room.
And again, to go back to the religion aspect, it's like, we created religion. Man created religion. It didn't just exist. Someone had an idea. They were like, oh, there must be something, because various religions, but all of them came from ideas. And a church is a church because we built it to be a church. Someone went, no, this is a place where God will be worshipped.
Yeah.
Not
the whole idea in like horror movies and vampire movies of holy ground. Holy ground is only holy because we decided it was holy.
Yeah, someone made it holy.
Yeah, that's why I always like. I like this in like vampire and like exorcism movies, but it is kind of like funny when they point out that holy water is just water that's been baptized. Just, the
it's
priest
just been blessed.
Yeah, the priest does his thing, and like that's holy water. Like that's all it takes. Like it's made, it's manufactured. Someone just does it. I think that's it's a funny idea, and here it's kind of playing with that. Like this room has so much meaning to these three men when and
they have put the meaning upon it. It didn't have that meaning on its own.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big elements of this movie is the idea of the zone and what it means. It's something that's grown out of maybe the despair of this world, that some people just have to believe that it's this magical place that can do these things. The stalker himself keeps going back because he has to believe in it.
Right. And again, you can say the same about religion to some extent. Some people will say, there has to be an afterlife, because if there's not, what's the point? And it's this idea that to them, it has to be real, because they can't fathom it not being real. And the stalker is here. It's like, well, of course it's real. How can it not be?
Yeah, and me being me, my argument is, well, there is no point. Doesn't have to be a point.
Right.
Maybe that's my philosophy a bit more, but
but like, and that's fine. People can go either way. I don't care what you believe, but it's this idea of these three men here have different beliefs, and they need to figure out how to not attack each other over them. They need to coexist.
But I do think it's interesting that at least the writer for some time did kind of believe in it, and at least wanted to find out about it and see if there was any truth to it. I mean, the professor, I think you argue that he always had the intention of, if it's real, if it's there, he's going to blow it up.
But again, it's very scientist of. It's like, if you tell scientists you find definitive proof that God exists, then they'll go, okay, sure, there's a God.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But again, it's like, okay, but that's this professor here is like, yeah, okay, I don't necessarily believe it, but that's why I'm going to see it for myself. I'm going to find out.
Yeah, it's that whole old idea that like a scientist who has to prove things. It's not that if he finds out there is a god, if there's proof there's a god, he instantly goes, oh well, in that case I'm religious now, I'm going to church. It's the reaction more likely would be, okay, there's a god. I wonder how that affects everything else we know. Let's look into it. Let's analyze it some more. Let's
Yeah, exactly.
like that would be how the most would react to it. I mean, maybe there's some who would like suddenly be biblical, but like most wouldn't. Most would start to, okay, that's interesting. How does that affect things?
Yeah, most good scientists are open to the idea of God being proved. If that makes sense, like if they prove if God is real, then most of them would accept, because that's kind of how science works. If you prove something, you believe it.
Yeah, and I think you can look at this movie as the idea that people as a whole are moving away from that, and the Stalker's kind of an outlier. Like, he's one who's like still in these old ways, and he's trying to believe in this thing, and he doesn't want to change, and these people are kind of forcing him to. They're forcing him to sort of face the belief, might not be real.
They're literally trying to bomb his holy place.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
They are literally trying to destroy it from society, not just take it away from him. They're trying to make sure that this doesn't that no one can be like that.
Yeah, they're trying to take it away from him. And it's interesting. They do come back. They come back to this little bar that they met up at the bar at the start of the movie. And at the end of the movie, they come back here. And I do think it's interesting that we never see even like a montage of them coming back. They just come back. They're just already there.
Yeah, because the journey's over.
Well, yeah, obviously from a movie point of view it is. Yeah, that's why you don't see it. But I think it's interesting that it was such a hard journey to get there, but coming back, like, was the danger there? Was he thrown in the nuts? Did they just not believe anymore, so it was fine? They just walked back?
Yeah. No, it's good questions.
I actually don't know. It's interesting.
And of course, I mean, you say, oh, we didn't go into the room that we saw. They say they didn't go into the room.
Yeah.
But there's no guarantee that they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Yeah, it's kind of ambiguous. Again,
there are things at this ending that you could argue do imply that maybe they did go into the, like the dog, for example. We haven't really talked about the dog yet, have we?
Yeah, there's a dog they see occasionally in the zone that's kind of following them around.
Yeah.
And comes back with them.
Yeah, it becomes this companion that has come back with them. Maybe that's what one of them needed. Like we talk about this desire. Maybe that's what the room granted them, the dog, because they needed this companion.
If you go down this path that it's real, sure, yeah, like you could go that way. And of course, it's worth mentioning that when his wife comes to get him with his daughter at the end of the movie, it does switch to colour for one or two moments outside the zone. Like, it's back in sepia when they first come out, but there's a moment when he's like walking, he's got his daughter on his shoulders, and his wife's walking along with him along the beach, essentially. So it's a shitty beach, but it's a beach. It's the shore.
By definition, yes.
Yeah. It's all pebbles instead of like proper nice sand. So it's just one of those really crappy beaches. You don't go and spend the day at this beach.
No. It's a cheap beach.
This is where you throw your bodies that you've need to dispose of.
It's a knockoff, isn't it? Let's face.
But no, it's in colour for a little bit, and I was like, oh, is this the idea that? Because obviously the reason why I think the zone's in colour, we spoke about it a little bit in the spoiler free, but the idea that this is where the hope is, this is where the dreams are, this is where imagination is. The idea that outside the zone everything's lost its colour because everyone's just kind of living in the place in society. It's a rut. There's no movement. There's nothing else. Whereas in here, the idea of the things you want, the dreams, all of it can happen.
Yeah,
it's basically it is Oz. I've even heard one interpretation is that it is literally like a dream. It's Oz. They never actually go to a physical place, and I don't buy that. I don't think the dog coming back with them is kind of a
no, it doesn't work for me.
But I think thematically it kind of works.
Yeah,
like where they go where they need to go in this like wonderland of color, and then they come back because Wizard of Oz, to be fair, does do that. Like, it starts in black and white and goes to color. So
it does.
I don't think that's a complete accident either.
No, and I think just another way of looking at it is the idea that They went into the zone. The zone is the place that's, full of the answers, so to speak. It's this mythical place, and the idea that maybe they were a bit more enlightened when they came out after this journey. They went through this journey. They found themselves a bit more. So now they can see little bits in their lives that are better.
But if you compare it to Wizard of Oz, I do like the idea that they got to the room, but they chose not to see the man behind the curtain. Because they realised that's, at least for the stalker, that's
they don't want to break the illusion again.
Yeah, we want to believe that there is the great and powerful Oz.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that kind of way. But he goes home. It's actually sepia again when he goes home, and he's very depressed. It's like his world's been shattered. And we didn't mention, of course, that his daughter is disabled. She has crutches. She can't walk properly.
And again, to go back to the nuclear thing, it's they talk about how it's this. Or the children of stalkers are like this, because they spend so much time in the zone.
Yeah, they bring up that the children of stalkers, because they spend time, they might get radiation poisoning, and that passes on to their kids, and that's why she may be like this. But what's funny to me is that he's so broken. His wife seems relatively happy he's back. We have her, but we actually end on his daughter. We've seen her maybe once or twice at the start of the movie. And that's it. She's not had a lot of screen time, right? Certainly not. And I think she's actually one of the most important parts of the movie. Certainly for his character. I think the idea that he needs to believe in something, maybe what he would ask for if he went into the room would be for his daughter, because his daughter's...
I think, we didn't mention the rest of the story with his mentor is...
Oh, go on, yeah.
His brother went missing in the zone, and he went in to get him back. And he went into the room with the intention of going, no, give me my brother back. But instead he got money. And it was this idea of what he thought he wanted was one thing, but what he actually truly wanted was much more selfish. And for the stalker, it's this idea that he says he wants his daughter to be better. He says that's what he wants. But if he goes in and he gets something else,
it'll prove who he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he'll be ashamed of himself. And maybe that's why the previous stalker hung himself. Yeah. But we have this film, and even before the big thing that happens, right? Even before that, I actually just liked the idea of it fading to black on the daughter reading her book. It just kind of made sense to me. It was like, oh, no, this was kind of all for her, and he needs to believe that he's a better person. And the irony, of course, is that he's abandoning his daughter and his wife to go and do something that might put him in jail for years, which is, worse for them in every possible circumstance. But she puts the book down, and she puts her head on the table. And there's 3 glasses on the table, and the film reveals, at least in one interpretation, that she has telekinetic powers, and she starts moving the glasses on the table with her mind. I also want to note down the 3 glasses, which I think represent the 3 characters in the movie, the stalker, the professor, and the writer, because she pushes one, it goes so far, she pushes the second one, it goes a bit further, and then the third one goes right off the edge and smashes. And I think that's been the stalker. He's the one that's went over the edge, and right, if you want to look at it that way. As far as her telekinetic powers, because I think there's a train going by, everything's shaking. I think you could argue, the train.
I think it's a legitimate interpretation if you want to take it as that. It's clearly intentional, so you can go, is this the train? And it's the child's imagination that's this again, to go back to this belief that she is doing this.
Yeah, that she's dreaming about something, that she believes she's special, and that's kind of the stalker's thing. Is he was a stalker. He took people in because he had to believe it was special, that he was important. He wasn't just another person.
So if you tell me you want to believe it's that works thematically really well still.
That works thematically. Telekinetic powers, multiple things you can look at. One, is this just another side effect of the radiation poisoning that he's brought back with him?
Yep.
Is it that? Because that's like a common story thing, the idea that nuclear radiation especially gives you powers, or at least in this case, through children, it would develop into powers, and that idea. Especially mental powers, that's usually the first thing that people talk about, obviously you have Spider-Man, which is very different, but a lot of when you're playing something like Fallout, when you run into someone who's got powers, it's probably a psychic thing.
Yeah.
Usually it is. So that's an idea. There's the other idea. Did he go in the room? Did he say, make my daughter make my daughter not be weak again? And the room kind of did the genie thing where it interpreted it and went, well, I'm not giving her back her legs, but I'll give her something else that puts her
right.
even more powerful.
I think the idea is they don't necessarily ask outright because they just
Yeah.
get what they want. And I think it's not that he goes, I want her to be better. It's, I want her to be able to look after herself when I'm gone.
Okay, yeah, that's the way.
And this would be a way to do that. She would be able to, move things around and, function, as a in normal life without any help.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. But it's like there's so much you can read into with this. Like I say, like do the glasses represent the three men, or if they don't, what does it represent that she's pushing one off the edge? The other thing I like to read this, regardless of why she has the power, I like the idea that, okay, he's become disillusioned. He's like in this world that's cold and dark and grey, and it feels like there's no hope. But the simple idea that the next generation, maybe they have the hope, and that's where I kind of tie it into almost maybe like a secret anti-Soviet message of sorts, where it's like, okay, we were all in this Soviet rule, but maybe our children will get out of it. Maybe there's the hope of that.
Yeah.
They'll get to go beyond
That
that.
ties in nicely to the wife's monologue that happens just before this. She looks right at the camera and has this good few minute long monologue where she talks about how everyone warned her not to marry the stalker because the children would be like this. He could be arrested. It's a hard life, but she did it anyway because she couldn't fathom. She couldn't see a reason not to. She thought this and she says she doesn't regret it. And yeah, there's been unhappiness. There's been times of it's been rough, but she's had happiness, more happiness than she believes she would have had otherwise. And she talks about how if she hadn't, she would have had a boring, uneventful life because she'd have just followed the pattern of everyone else. But by doing the opposite, by breaking the rules, by not doing what she was told, she had that happiness, even though she had to risk for it. Again, it's the idea of to go into your Soviet Union. It's you can follow the rules, you'll be safe, but it'll be boring. But if you do what you want to do, if you do, you have to break those rules and do that, then maybe it'll be rough, it'll be tough, but you'll get your happiness.
And even just in a broader sense, there's the old sort of idea that anyone who ever accomplished anything or did something amazing was never normal. They never just followed the rules and did things by the book.
Exactly.
They took chances. They did things they weren't supposed to. Whether you're talking about inventors or you're talking about people who changed the world.
But
in
this
other
is
ways,
taken going. No, everyone should do that because then that's how you get happiness by doing your path. Again, to go back to the idea of they had to find their own path through the zone. You have to do it your way, not just what society says.
And but that statement, it's almost like the stalker doesn't understand his own teachings. He doesn't apply it to himself. He doesn't understand it. Like he's so focused in putting it into this meaning in this place that he never just actually follows that ideology in life.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. But I actually think the ending's quite hopeful. I like to read it as, no, there's hope for the future. Like she will actually have a better life than he did because she'll think outside the box. She'll do different things, and you could argue that the telekinesis is just a metaphor for trying new things and different things, or you could take it literally and say, "Oh, no, she's going to be a superhuman and be a superhero."
And to go back to she pushes the three glasses away. You going, oh, I wonder what else they could represent. Just the idea of we talked about how the three characters represented these three main ideas of society, whereas they're like her rejecting society as it is, going, no, we could do something else.
Yeah,
clear the table, have a fresh start, so to speak.
And I think what's interesting about this movie is, doing a bit of looking into it and seeing like other theories and what other people think and all that. Is some other movies I think typically have like one set thing that is the main theory that everyone typically agrees with. There's a few other weirder ones where you can maybe like dive into other ideas. Like Mulholland Drive, most people typically agree on the one, at least for the most part, the main interpretation. 2001: A Space Odyssey, most people kind of agree on the main theory that goes around. This one
We'll have to do that at some point.
Yeah, 2001's a movie. I think Kubrick in general, we have to do Kubrick movies.
Have we not done one yet?
I don't think we have.
Oh, I don't think we have. You're right.
And the dude's a master. Like every movie I've seen of his, I've at least really liked, and then there's the ones that I just think are
I think there's one where I was like, yeah, that was pretty good, and that was like my least favorite. I was like, yeah, it's still pretty damn good.
So, but yeah, so this one though, this movie, I feel like there is no set. Like this is the one everyone kind of agrees on roughly, or this is the most popular theory.
Okay, I haven't looked into this at all.
Especially the ending, like there's no clear, like everyone kind of agrees. No, this is one you're meant to interpret and take what you want from it, which it kind of makes sense given the themes of the movie. It's all about what you believe in your ideas and following your own path. So you take what you want from it, and I think it's actually to go back to is this like a way of not having anti-Soviet messages, but talking about the ideas of being in this society and kind of like saying to people, no, try and be unique without saying something that would get it banned.
It's individuality.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of communism, you know, it's equality, you know, being even. Whereas this is like, no, we can still be equal as people, but you know, do it with some flair, do it with some personality,
do it with some style.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially, it's like, no, be yourself still. Don't just do what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, everyone's different, and that's what makes us special.
Yeah, sure. If you want to bring it into cheesy territory.
What else might take it into? Does make sense. I think it's abundantly clear that we like this movie a lot.
Yep.
It's one that I'm glad I finally crossed off the what to watch list. I think I've literally, because on like on IMDb you have your to watch list, which I have been just casually clicking like movies to my watch list for like 10 years. This has been there since like the first year. I was doing that.
No, fair enough. I don't do that on IMDb, but
I don't do it as much anymore, mainly because I have like Letterboxd and stuff. But I don't really use the to watch list function on that as much.
I've never really had a watch list function on that. Like I say, I use Letterboxd and, you know, we track all those.
It's so handy though, because I'll look through it sometimes and I'll see like, oh, that's a really cool looking Korean movie from like 2002 I added on my watch list in 2002, and I've still not got around to it. I should probably maybe track that down. Like, you know, and it's like, oh, I should go back and watch some of these at some point. It's the sort of thing, maybe like once I've run out of the obvious things to put on the list for this, is I'll start just taking from my IMDb to watch list. But no, it's I'm glad I finally watched this. Any other sort of theories or moments you want to talk about before we? No,
I think we covered a lot of it. I think.
Yeah. Fantastic film. So I guess with that, we will rate it out of 10. So I'm curious where this is going to land for you.
I think I'm going to give it a 9. Yeah, like that moment. Yeah, the moment with the dream scene. There's maybe a little bit near the start where it's like, okay, could have been just cut down just a little bit, just here or there. There's just enough where it's not quite a 10.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is it's 2 hours 40, but if we're going to cut stuff out of it, we're talking 5-10 minutes tops. We're not talking.
Oh yeah, I don't think like at a bare minimum it would still be like 2 hours 20.
Yeah.
Like that's like slashing at it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't slash it at that much.
No, of course not. I'm just saying that's like that you'd have to really hack away to get down that far.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's moments we've glossed over, and I'm sure there's other things you can interpret with it, because there is, like I say, I feel like there's like at least 50 like main interpretations you can take from this movie.
And I will say this is a movie I think I want to watch again in like 5-10 years.
In fact, there was another one I said. I don't want to take credit for this. I saw someone else say this. You know, I've been saying they represent like the religious man, the scientist, whatever. One of the other ones. This is way more. I feel like I'd have to take a psychology class to actually do it. Is
this the 3 stages of like boy, man?
No. It was the id, the ego, and the superego.
Okay.
And I can see how that applies just when you say those to me, but I don't know enough about that terminology to really dig in deep.
I was just saying, what I was saying, the stages of life. You know, the stalker is the boy, you know, who will believe in things, you know, because that's what children do. They have this imagination. The writer is the middle-aged adult, you know, the younger adult,
midlife crisis.
Not even quite that far. Who's still, you know, who's you know, romantic about the world, who wants to go and see it. Whereas the scientist is the older man. He's done his life. He's seen his things. He knows what he believes.
Yeah, the writer wants to question it and interpret it. But then the scientist is like, no, I'm set in my ways. I need cold hard facts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. See, like I say, there's multiple ways to look at it.
There is. So, like I would say, like I'd want to watch this again. I think, like, you know, now I know what it is, and because I want to. To be honest, this might even go up over the next week. I say 9 now, but I might if I finish this, a couple of hours before we started talking, so it hasn't had time to sit with me yet.
Which is funny because I've had a bit more time than that, because we were meant to do this last week, before everything got delayed. Because you were away for a trip for 2 days, but then the day before that, when we were supposed to do this and we were supposed to do our Mr. Robot review, some life stuff came up unexpectedly. You got taken away for another day, which pushed everything back. This became this week's episode. News just got cancelled and everything got added onto the next news, and Mr. Robot got done at the weekend. But so because of that, though, I'd already watched this like last week.
Right.
So it's been like 6-7 days for me.
So yeah, this is what I mean. Where I've only had a couple of hours to process this. I'm not really.
Which is why when Connor was talking about quotes, he was remembering them really well, and I was kind of like
Yeah,
trying to think
yeah,
of them.
yeah. I watched this
Yeah.
3 hours ago. You watched it a week ago, but I feel like give me a week and see if I'm still going through this in my mind. See what other ideas I had because I've had a lot of ideas even just while talking about it that I didn't necessarily have beforehand.
I mean, I was sitting thinking about it for hours after I watched it, and like I say, I looked up other I was like, no, I want to see what other people have said about this.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to do that yet.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance.
I want to read what everyone else thinks about this. I want to see what other people say about it.
So this has the potential to go up even as soon as in a week's time. Just how I'm feeling about it then.
And that's when I found the stuff about the how it kind of mirrors actual nuclear accidents that happened in Russia and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. Like the allegories that are here and the idea that if you were in the East at the time under Soviet rule and you dreamed of something better, the idea that this fenced off, because the idea that obviously the Berlin Wall, for example, like that was literally fencing you off from at least what you dreamed the West was. Whether you want to argue if the West was actually that that great is up for debate, but the idea that people who dreamed of it being better, the grass is always greener, for example, to use an old phrase, but the idea that okay, this fenced area may actually have something magical. It may be like this better place that they're keeping from us. They don't want us to get there because they keep nice things from us. The idea of turning that into sort of the basis of the plot, is kind of a cool touch.
No, I agree. So I'm saying 9, with the addition that I may come in and add a comment in a week or two, and if it's changed, because it might.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 9 as well. Which is Influx is a bit weirder than the other movie shows because Influx is often stuff that either we typically pick because we like it, or we pick it because we really want to see it. And if we really want to see it,
it's got a reputation. Yeah,
it's like I don't want to see Stalker by Tarkovsky because it was something I found randomly in a bargain bin someday. It was no. I've heard the reputation. Criterion are putting. It has a Criterion release. Like, there's a reason why I wanted to watch this. But it's getting a straight 9. But I actually agree that with repeat viewings, this might actually sneak up higher. It might actually sneak up into... Because right now, I like this more than Solaris. That said, it's been a little while since I've watched Solaris. And I feel like that was a very confusing, sort of vague watch as well at the time. I'd be curious to do that at some point for this show and actually talk about it and talk about ideas and what things represent.
Maybe next year.
Yeah, sometime next year, yeah. One Tarkovsky film a year, I think, is a nice idea to work through his catalogue.
Maybe it can be a nice, like a December thing.
That's a Christmas tradition, we do a Tarkovsky movie.
Why not?
Okay.
Pepsi have got a new ad campaign this year going, hey, their campaign is make a new Christmas tradition. Obviously, they're trying to steal it from Coca-Cola, but...
Coca-Cola, who invented the modern freaking Santa Claus, you've got no chance, Pepsi.
No, exactly.
No chance.
Every time I see one of these adverts, I just chuckle like, yeah, nice try. Have a new tradition. Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
What they should have done is
let's take the spirit of it and do our own tradition.
They should have done a blue Santa and had them rival the red Santa.
Yeah.
That'd have been funny. But no, so I think it's a fantastic film. I do want to revisit Solaris. I want to see Mirror is the other sort of bigger one that I know of off the top of my head. Andrei Rublev's another one of his films. It's funny how the first two I watched were the sci-fi ones. I went to the sci-fi movies.
Just because it's you.
Because it's me. But obviously he's got a big library of other things. That,
and of course, I think you could argue how much this one even counts as sci-fi.
Yeah, I would put it in the sci-fi section, but yeah.
I would as well, but I can see the argument.
But obviously it's an artsy science fiction film. It's not... Here's something to watch after a Star Wars and a Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not one of those. But hey, so no, fantastic. What's that?
I said, speaking of, Star Wars is soon. It's gonna be good.
You don't know it's gonna be good. Could be bad.
I got a good feeling.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, obviously we will be reviewing The Last Jedi. The weekend it comes out, it'll be probably on the Sunday evening when the review goes up. That's Gigawatts, of course. That'll be me, Matt, and I think Connor. Are you making that review?
I am making that movie.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not missing it.
Right.
I need to fight you in case you come out and talk shit. I need to be there.
Are you worried that it's going to be like Rogue One, where I have very
No,
negative
no.
opinions?
Look, the thing is, I just need to defend Porgs more than anything else.
Hey, look, so the funny thing is I'm not that super excited because, yeah, just Rogue One's got me down a little bit in Star Wars. However, I liked Force Awakens, so I'll probably end up liking it. I do have to say that what's funny though, because I'm not super excited, is that unlike everyone else who's like, oh, it's only a week away, I completely just forgot it was coming, and then it was like, oh, it's next week? Okay. I completely just forgot about it. Of course, everyone else is talking about midnight shows. Like, no, I'll see it I'll see it in the afternoon the next day.
Yeah, yeah. I got my double bill booked. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I'll have time. I might watch Force Awakens again before it.
Well, that was my problem. I was like, I really want to watch Force Awakens again just because, but obviously we're very busy, and I was like, when am I going to fit this in? So I thought, hey, double bill, that solves my problem.
You say that, but you ruined the schedule because now your midnight show and you have to leave the house like 3 or 4 hours earlier. So you've screwed the schedule anyway. It's not
yeah. But now I can't. Now I can't. Like I can justify it. Before it'd be like, well, I could watch this movie, or I could watch what I'm supposed to for this. But now it's like, well, it's booked. I'm out of the house. It's paid for. I'm off.
Okay. Fine. Anyway, so that's Stalker.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
That's fantastic. I loved it a lot. This is good, heady science fiction. It is artsy, it's philosophical, it's psychological, and it's all wrapped in a neat, unique package. Which, again, if you're the sort of person who sees 2 hours 40 minutes film in Russian with subtitles, and you like, oh god, that sounds horrible. Yeah, stay away. It's not for you. But if you're open to some interesting viewpoints and different ideas, I think it's a great little movie. So, there you go. That's actually quite a long discussion. I was kind of expecting. I was expecting a lot of interpretations and stuff.
Yeah, that's it. Because there are so many different interpretations, you can't just go, okay, this is what happened. Whereas, is that good or bad? It's like, oh no. There's this.
Yeah. So, by all means, if you've seen Stalker, let us know what you think in the comments. Do check it out if you're all interested. I do think it's fascinating that we do have some people who I think will just watch the whole video just because they're used to coming and watching our reviews, but necessarily won't be interested in it. I think that's kind of interesting to me.
I think this is actually a fascinating one where a lot of movies where it's plot heavy and there's twists and turns. I would recommend not doing that. Go in and experience it. This one, I think, it could be interesting if you have these ideas in your head first when you're watching it. Could be fascinating to watch still.
Yeah, it could be because you're just sort of. Yeah, because you're already thinking about it as you're watching.
You're not going, okay, what's this about? You're going, okay, here are some ideas to look out for. How do these things play into that instead? It'd be like, how I feel like I'm going to be on a rewatch.
Yeah, because you've got those. Because there's certain ideas I only got like maybe an hour and a half into it. Whereas if I had that idea from the start of the movie, I might have been reading other things as well, and
exactly
in other ways, yeah. But no, so that is us. So hopefully, this longer one made up for the fact we didn't have one last week, so apologies for that. Next week, we will be doing the winner of the previous vote, the Patreon vote, which was Galaxy Quest. So you can expect just sci-fi again, but complete, comedy. We're doing something really different next week.
Yeah, just a bit of fun next week.
A bit of fun, bit of Star Trek patire and satire. Parody and satire. That's what I meant to say.
I was like, what the hell's patire? I was just gonna go, sure. Well, I'm too tired to fight you at the minute.
Actually, I'm going to argue and say it's not parody. It's just satire. No, it's parody. It's not satire. No, it is. This is weird, but it's kind of both. Well, I feel like satire, you're kind of being critical, which I guess you kind of are because you're pointing out tropes, but at the same time, you're also because. Yeah, it's more satire, actually, because parody tends to be just making fun of it. Satire is being critical, but whilst also respecting what it is. And I feel like Galaxy Quest is a movie that respects science fiction. Like, it's having fun with it because it loves the genre, not because it's...
It is, but it's a parody in the sense that it's spoofing a lot of ideas.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing, though. Satire is a form of parody.
It is.
So, I'm saying it's satire, but it's not broad parody. Because broad parody to me is like Scary Movie and shit like that.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you.
Satire is the smarter version.
That's definitely not satire.
No, it's definitely not. That's not satire. That's just throwing shit at the wall and hoping something's funny. Whilst repeating lines from other movies. So that's coming next week. The week after that, or the episode after that, I think it's the week after that, but the episode after that, we are actually going to do our first movie from The Vault. What is The Vault, you may ask? The Vault is our user-submitted list of films from patreon.com. That's the other perk you get in the $5 tier, along with the voting. is that as often as you want, as many as you can want, you can submit movies to the vault, which is a to-do list of movies that every so often we'll pick one to do for an episode, or maybe we'll put it in the next Patreon vote, either or. And
basically, we pick a lot of themes for the Patreon votes.
Yeah.
Like this month's that you voted Galaxy Quest was space movies.
Yeah.
There might be one where we go, well, we can't think of a theme, so it's Vault month.
Yeah, so it's 4 Vault movies going up head to head. Although that's a bit weird though, because if it ends up being like 4 different people picked them, then they're all going to vote for their own pick, right?
I think each time we do a Vault month, it has to be 4 from the same person, just so that they can't have that. And then, because we'll do a Vault month every so often on the Patreon, and you go, okay,
sure.
So this person.
Well, it depends. It depends how many people have been submitting them. Like, because if some people have only submitted 1 or 2, and there's a lot of people who have submitted, it's a bit unfair if like only people who have had 4 or more put in that.
That's true.
Not that stops Board now, who's put in like 30, but like everyone else, like who isn't as insane with it.
But basically, what we're saying is, if you're gonna put something in the vault, do 4, because then we can do a month of it. It'd be great. It's really convenient for us.
What, so you're saying we're going to do, this is Vault Month, and then the person who submitted them, and then everyone else to vote on which one it was. Okay, interesting. I don't know if I'm agreeing to this, but you're hearing the thought process out loud.
This is usually behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
But...
but yeah, so we're going to pick a Vault movie for the following episode after that. Which one? I don't think we've decided yet, but we're going to look at it. So if you want to like, get some in last minute, so they're on the list when we're looking at it to decide the week before, now would be the time.
Yeah, you've got about a week to do it.
So that is because we just recorded our first ever Crypt episode of Screams, which is the same thing but for the horror movies for Screams, which I won't reveal because it's not up yet. It'll be going up after this one, at least for patrons.
Ooh, sneaky.
So I'm not going to tell you what it is, but that's also a thing. So
if you're viewing this already on YouTube in publicly, that'll already be up for them. Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you're watching this early on Patreon, it won't be. Well, it might be. It depends when you watch it. Like, it'll be a couple of days after this goes up on Patreon.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's why you should go to patreon.com/mailfuzztv if you want to support us. You get a couple of cool bonuses like that. Lets you interact with the show a little bit. But always try to think of new ways to let people kind of, help pick
we
stuff.
Take suggestions.
Yeah, because people like to suggest stuff in comments, but we never remember them. Let's be honest. That's why we came up with the Vault and the Crypt. It was okay. Here's our official list. Which, by the way, everyone can see what that list is. It's in the links below in the description. You can actually just go click in the Vault and you can see what all the movies are. And then once we start doing them, I'll maybe put like a done list at the bottom. You can see what's been crossed off.
Yeah.
So yeah, fun ideas. But yeah, other than that, let us know what you think of the movie. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want the audio feed, check out the link in the description to that. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching. Keep watching movies, and we'll see you next time.